Any business is a team sport. The staffing business for sure is a team effort. We don't have a product. Our product is the talent that we find. The staffing industry is definitely behind when it comes to technology. There are some really slick tools from an AI perspective that allow account managers and recruiters to actually practice conversations with prospective candidates or prospective hiring managers dozens, hundreds of times before they're actually on a live call.
Welcome to today's LinkedIn Live. Happy summer. We've been doing a little less frequently over the course of the summer just because I, like everyone else, am taking a little bit of time off, but really, really happy to be back today and a really special guest. I don't know what to say about Andrew, but I'll let him introduce himself a bit too. Andrew is the new CEO of ALKU. He has a very interesting story about his career and about this very interesting company. ALKU is they're a highly specialized, let's say that, consulting services firm where they deploy highly skilled consulting resources in technologies, HCIT, life sciences, and government programs. So today we'll talk about Andrew's story, we'll talk about the company, we'll talk about leadership, culture, and the future of work. Someone who is in this industry would know. So let me bring you forward. Great. Well, it's a little far forward. Let's go here. Welcome and thanks for joining us, Andrew.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Karen. Great to be on the show and excited to have a great conversation.
Terrific. Me as well. So congratulations are in order as the new CEO of the organization. Can you talk a little bit about what ALKU does for any of our viewers who aren't familiar?
Sure. I mean, you hit the highlights, but yeah, we're a staffing firm and we focus mostly in the IT and life sciences spaces. And really what a staffing firm does is, if you think about what most companies are trying to do, is they're trying to find talent, right? And bring talent into their organization. And what ALKU does is we go out and find that talent for companies, and specifically, human talent, human capital. And most of our engagements with clients are on a contract basis. We're solving mission critical projects in the life sciences and IT space. So think large scale ERP implementations. A company wants to implement something like Workday. We come in and bring experts to help out with that. A hospital system wants to implement a new EMR like Epic. We come in and bring in highly specialized consultants to help out with that implementation. A life sciences company is building out a new manufacturing line. We bring in consultants who have expertise in helping getting that line up and running and making sure it's compliant with FDA regulations. So those are some of the examples of types of resources that we would bring in. But yeah, at our core, we're a staffing firm that goes and finds talent and brings it into organizations that need it.
Great. And can you give, I'm sure, I hope you can, some examples of some of the organizations that you work with that we might be familiar with?
Yeah, I mean, we work with most of the, Fortune 1000 companies, so companies like Johnson & Johnson on the life sciences side, organizations, the major hospital systems like Mass General, of course, some of the large government prime contractors like Lockheed Martin, GDIT, Boeing, just on the government side. So yeah, you think of your Fortune 1000 companies that are going to have major IT initiatives, and then on the life sciences side, major investment in manufacturing, major investment in R&D, and major investment in compliance.
Okay, that's quite a broad swath of well-known companies. Thank you for sharing those with us. I want to start this conversation, now that we understand a little bit about the company, with you and your journey. And so you started as an intern and you are now the CEO, which is an amazing story sort of in and of itself. I think we can all applaud. And I want to hear about your journey, but particularly if you can think back to when you were an intern, because this worked out so well. I think it'd be fascinating to know, how did you choose this company? And if you know, sort of, why did they choose you? Why was this such a good fit?
Well, it's kind of a funny story. So I'll how long do we have on this interview, Karen? How much time?
We have about 30 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll give you the middle length version of the story.
Okay.
So I became an intern, I think, because when I interviewed with a whole bunch of employees at the time, or the founders really of the company of ALKU, I interviewed for a full-time role. And I think they were like, yeah, Andrew seems good, but we're not totally sure if he's going to be the right fit. We're not sure if he has it. What if we gave him an internship opportunity? Because at the time I was a senior at UMass Amherst.
Okay.
So I had like a winter break and some time before I would start full time. And they offered me an internship position. It was the first internship position that the company had ever had. And I came in and I had no idea what staffing was. I didn't know that I wanted to be even in sales. Like all I knew was that the people that I interviewed with, the founder who is, Mark Eldridge, I interviewed with Mark and a few other employees that were early on in the company. And they just seemed like great people to work with. They seemed like people who had great energy. They were on a mission. They were building something fun and exciting. And I wanted to be a part of it. So I accepted the internship with glee and came in and threw myself into, following the process that they trained and taught me to follow. And I guess I did a good enough job because they gave me a full-time offer to start, the following June as a recruiter. So what drew me into the company was really the people that I spoke with, and not necessarily the staffing industry.
Yeah.
I didn't really know much about it. It was really the people.
I'm just going to diverge here for a minute, because in my own story, which you and I didn't get a chance to talk about, I was a very early employee at Compact Computer, if you remember them. And there were three guys who left Texas Instruments, where I was working as my first job, and they left to go start a new company. And not only did I not know much about the industry, what they were building was a secret. They couldn't tell. They hadn't announced a product yet. It was pre-revenue. And so I didn't even know what they were making. But these are the people that I admired and liked, that I was working with at TI, and they left. And I wanted to work with them. And that's really how that company got started and be built and grew as fast as it did. So I hear you, and I just want to underscore this for people who are listening and watching us. This is really important, right? I mean, I don't think you want to go to work in an industry that's failing, or that you don't have some affinity to, but it is the team that you are working with that I would say gets top priority.
100%. I mean, any business is a team sport, but the staffing business for sure is a team effort, right? Because we don't have a product. Our product is the talent that we find, and we find that talent through hard work and through working together as a team. And if you like the people you work with, the amount of success that you have is far greater than the success that you'd have if you don't really get along, or you're not inspired by the group that you're with. And I think it's such an important point that we've made such an effort to continue having that feeling when we're talking to prospective hires, right? Like, we want to present ourselves as an exciting, motivating, fun group of people to work with, because that's who we are. And a lot of people who wind up deciding to work at ALKU follow the same trajectory that I did, which means I don't know what ALKU is. I don't really know what staffing is, but the people that I talk to seem like they're on a mission, seem like they're fun to work with, seem like they'll teach me and spend the time to work with me to make sure I'm successful. And that's why a lot of employees wind up working at the company. It's not because they have this dream of being in staffing.
Yeah. So one more question around this, and then I'll let us move on. But I'm curious about why you stayed, and because over the course of a career, one has many options. Yeah. So why you stayed, and sort of what was the biggest barrier that you had in terms of growing your career?
Mm-hmm. So great question. I mean, the reason I've stayed, there's a lot, but if I had to boil it down to the most important reason, it is the people. Mm-hmm. And I know that sounds cliche, and I'm not just saying the people that are around the company or in the company, but it was the people that I worked alongside, the people that I worked for, and the people that have worked for me. Like, I never wanted to let anybody down. Mm-hmm. And coming into work every day and doing this job for myself only gets you, that only gets you so far, right? Like, you can have a lot of motivation and, doing the work for yourself and wanting to make a name for yourself and wanting to do a good job so that you can show others that you're doing a good job is highly motivating, and something that, everybody probably feels a good amount of as they're, working through their career. But the most important thing to me over a long period of time was not wanting to let anybody down, wanting to make sure that, those that were working for me were getting where they wanted to go because I invested so much time in them and us. And those that I worked for, wanting to make sure that I'm not letting them down either, and making them look good and making them feel like, hey, we're all in this together and working hard to push forward. So when you have people who have invested in you and then you invest in people and everybody sticks around, it's pretty easy to stay.
Yeah, great. So the company's been recognized both for rapid growth, but also for its strong culture. And what are the sort of leadership practices that have been non-negotiable for you to lead the company through that journey?
Yeah, it's a great question. Well, there's a few things. We like to say that, and this is the way we look at our business, right? We are old school business practice, meaning, you're going to have to follow a hardcore process to have success here. You're going to have to make a lot of phone calls. You're going to have to, hit these KPIs that we lay out every single week and make sure you're, meeting or exceeding those. And, we view that as sort of like an old school sales mindset in terms of how we approach the business, but with what we call cutting edge people practice, right? So old school business practice, but cutting edge people practice. And what we mean by cutting edge people practice is we will spend a ton of time with you as you're learning the business, as you're following that process. We'll teach you every step along the way. We'll create goal sheets for you. We'll hold you accountable to those goal sheets. We'll have weekly one-on-ones. We'll have additional training opportunities. And then as you start to elevate your career and have success, we will put you on a career path where you can learn even more, where you can get into leadership if that's something that you want to accomplish, where you can become a career salesperson or a career recruiter at the company if that's the path that you want to go. Hey, if you're really interested in learning how to train others and invest in our intern program and, be in our training centers, which, that's a whole nother part of the business that we've invested in the last few years. If that's a path that you want to go, we have a way to get you there. So we just invest a lot of our time as leaders in not only the newer folks into the company and making sure that they have success, but when they start having the success, showing them a career path of how they can continue to develop. So that's how we've approached it. And one other thing to add that's extremely important is we hire essentially exclusively entry level. So people that are coming out of college with no experience, teaching them how to have success in this job is, it's a lot. It's a lot of work for the leadership team to do that, but that's how we learned, right? We didn't know anything and we all learned a process and then had success, and now we teach it to others. So hiring entry level is key for us, and looking for character traits of those entry level employees is much more important than looking for past experience, right?
I have two questions. I want two threads there that I want to pull on. Yep. One is, so hiring entry level, which I'd read that you do. So pre-prepared question here. That seems like it's really great for a cohesive culture, right? You bring people in, you sort of mold them into, what you want in terms of I'm sure you hire well because that's what you do. But then you sort of mold them into the ALKU way, if you will, which is wonderful for a cohesive culture. But how do you foster innovation and new ideas at all levels when you have what would seem to be sort of more of a monoculture within the organization?
Yeah, it's a good point. And it's something that we have had some challenges with over the years, right? And we've always tried to find ways to how do we keep people so focused on a process that is relatively rigid, but as they learn that process, how do they start to bring new ideas, innovate, create new opportunities within the company. And there's a couple of ways we've done that. One was, we've had this, we called it Mark Tank, which is, when Mark was the CEO, instead of Shark Tank, it was Mark Tank, which is come up with your ideas and submit them and pitch them in front of, a few executives and the whole company to, come up with some ideas on innovation and new things that we can do. And we've actually taken things from those, Mark Tank initiatives and, implemented them into the company. And then, the other thing that we do, and this is something that we've done really since the beginning, is while you're following that process as an account manager or a recruiter, inevitably you're going to be talking to lots of consultants if you're on the recruiting side, or lots of hiring managers if you're on the account management side, the sales side. And over the course of a long period of time, you start to learn more and more about the niche or the industry in which you're in. And from time to time, you start to hear as an account manager or a recruiter, hey, there's this new market, or there's this new skill set, or there's this new area within an industry that we don't currently support, but that seems to be highly in demand. And I keep hearing it from my hiring managers, or the consultants I'm working with keep talking about, upskilling themselves in these areas that I haven't heard about yet. And when we have these monthly strategy meetings with every division that we have, where that information is distilled and talked about and then acted upon if we deem, hey, this is a new market that we want to get into. So a lot of the new ventures that we've gotten into, whether it be the semiconductor space, which we just launched, or even like a new ERP division like Infor or Dayforce, or back in the day, Workday, like we got into these markets a lot of times through those grassroots efforts at the desk level. So that is a way that we innovate and get into new areas, is by empowering our desk level employees to share that information and help us make those decisions of where to go next.
Right. Yeah, these industries you're working in are not static, right? So innovation is important, which I'll come back to in a minute. One more thing about the company itself, you're committed to an in-office presence for your employees. And that's been a tug of war for most of my clients, and I think a lot of companies today, when we end up with sort of this hybrid, best case, we end up with hybrid. I'm a big fan of having at least some time in the office. What are some of the maybe unexpected benefits that you've seen from keeping your teams in person?
Yeah. Well, in a sales job where you're following those KPIs that I talked about before, which is really hard to do because it's a lot of effort and requires a lot of concentration, and you're not always having the best phone calls, right? They're not always warm and fuzzy phone calls, right? So doing that alone is challenging, right? Doing it with a whole bunch of people is challenging. Doing it alone is extra challenging. And what we found was during COVID, when we had to send everybody home, right? We persevered and did well through that transition, because I think we had great technology and we still had great relationships with each other. So we were able to make that happen. But what we found was, after a few months, we had our employees coming to us saying, hey, is there any way we could get back to the office? I know we're not supposed to yet, but is there any workaround, or what can we do? And, when the restrictions started lifting, we really didn't even have to make any determination of, hey, we're all back in the office by X day, because we had people just going back because they wanted to work with each other and work together. And remember, these people are, only maybe a year or 2 or 3 into their careers. They want to work with their peers. They want to learn from their peers. They want to deal with the hardships of the role together versus alone. So when you hire a whole bunch of hardworking, motivated, energetic people and give them a possibility of career path, they want to be together. And that's what we found.
Great. Yeah, I never had a role as I'll call it a BDR. I don't know what you call it in your universe, but I have so much respect for those people that get up and make those calls every day, because they are not all warm and fuzzy. And, great to have the support of your team around you. Let's talk a little bit about sort of the future, right, of work and staffing. So what do you see as the biggest opportunities in the staffing industry over the next 5 years or so? Yep. And what skills do you think, in terms of not for your company, but what you're looking for, what skills do you think will matter the most for success?
Yeah, it's another great question. I mean, I think, looking into the future, and, I'm certainly biased because of what ALKU focuses on, but I do think that having the niche focuses within industries and within skill sets will serve companies in the staffing industry really well. Just to say to a client that, hey, we are experts in the following areas that we can help with with your organization, because that's all we do in those areas, is something that I think clients will look at and say, yeah, it makes sense to partner with a company like ALKU when we have the specific expertise that we need to bring in, versus the generalist who is decent at everything, but not great at anything, right? And so being great in specific areas in the staffing market, we believe is certainly the future. Additionally, I think there's a huge opportunity for the staffing firms that really embrace technology to level themselves up. Having been in the industry now 15 years or so, and having spent some time talking with other, folks in other companies within the industry, the staffing industry is definitely behind when it comes to technology. And I think there is opportunity there for the firms that are most, willing to trailblaze, willing to experiment, and willing to try new technologies to get ahead. And that's something that, we've committed to internally is, developing technology, focusing on technology, and making sure that our recruiters and account managers have the best tools, have the best tech to go out and compete in the markets that they're in.
Could you talk a little more specifically about that? Sort of what kinds of tools or the major initiatives anyway that you'd be using internally? Because it's a pretty broad swath of things to choose from these days.
Yeah, it is. So there's a few things. The first I'll talk about is our internal training. As we've scaled our company, like trying to make sure that everybody continues to have the level of training that, I had when I started and the employee number 15 had, and, so on and so forth. Like we want to make sure that everybody has what they need as we continue to scale. We see an opportunity for AI to help with training our salespeople and recruiters on how to make calls before they're actually out there making the calls. And we've in the past done that in sort of a classroom setting and a role play setting, and that's worked well. And we're going to continue to do those things. But there are some really slick tools from an AI perspective that allow account managers and recruiters to actually practice conversations with prospective candidates or prospective hiring managers dozens, hundreds of times before they're actually on a live call. So in theory, you could have 200 calls before your first real call with somebody on the phone, and you've learned a whole bunch of how to navigate conversations and overcome objections and, sell what ALKU has to offer before you're out there in the real arena. So that's something that we're looking at a lot. Additionally, creating, I talked a little bit about our process, right? Like how we have this, I call it a bespoke process, something that we follow that perhaps other firms follow in some of their own ways, but we feel like we've got a special ALKU sauce. And we've really made an effort since 2017 to go through a digital transformation with that process. And as an example, our call lists at first were all in Excel, right? For many years, we had created our call list through Excel. And we said, look, if we're going to continue to scale the business, that isn't sustainable, right? Like I'm going to need to know.
It's a big moment for a company getting off the Excel spreadsheets.
So we developed basically a custom app to move the Excel call list to what we call AMCL or ALKU, account manager call list. And that's basically it takes everything that we know and love about our Excel call list, but it digitizes it. It makes it accessible anywhere. It makes it so that any account manager can see what any other account manager is doing or calling, so there's no overlap. It allows us to problem solve. It allows us to create lists quicker. So that's just one example of a piece of our process that we've digitized. But there's 4 or 5 of those that we've taken on over the last couple of years, and I feel like our team is incredibly tech enabled now.
Great. So you mentioned earlier that you were hiring people not just for their technical skills, but also, I can't remember if you used the word values or characteristics or something like that. What else do you look for?
Yeah, so I would say, Karen, I would say character traits. Like we really don't look at all at prior work experience other than, were you working hard? Like, were you working and were you, gritty in what you did in your jobs in the past, right? I don't care what those jobs were, but prove to us that you have overcome some adversity, that you're willing to work hard, that you're willing to hustle, and also prove to us that you can be coachable. And if you're able to be coachable and you can prove to us that you're willing to work hard and you've got examples of where that's happened and examples of where you've overcome adversity, you probably will have success at ALKU if you're willing to apply yourself and be a sponge to, what the leadership team is going to offer in terms of training. So that's the kind of person we're looking for. I always say to anybody that I talk to that may want to work at ALKU, it's like we are a best place to work, and we win a whole bunch of awards, right? We win a whole bunch of awards on best place to work in Boston and in North Carolina, where we have an office there, in Virginia, where we have an office there, right? We win all these awards about best place to work because we are, but for the right person. For the wrong person, ALKU is not a best place to work. ALKU could be more like a nightmare, right? So we do what I consider a really good job at painting the picture of the true reality of this job, and then essentially saying to prospective candidates, like, are you sure this is something that you want to do? Because it's difficult, it's challenging, but if you can overcome adversity, if you've been a hard worker in the past, we can get you there. So it's that balance of trying to scare them away, but also identifying if they could be the right fit for us.
Yeah, great. Well, we're almost at time. Sadly, I have a lot of other things I want to talk about, but I have one final question for you, which is, if we were having this conversation 5 years out, so let's pretend it's summer of 2030,
Yep.
What would you want ALKU to be known for?
It's the same thing that we're known for today, which is tremendous growth, right? We've, in 5 years, I would absolutely expect us to be talking about, and we hit $1 billion, within the last couple of years. Like, that's something that we really want to try to achieve, is hit that $1 billion mark, and we're marching towards it. And then of course beyond, right? But that's a big milestone for us. So 5 years from now, I would absolutely want us to be talking about how far past $1 billion we are in terms of revenue. But most importantly, we'd be talking about how many careers we've developed. How many people have come into the organization with little or no knowledge of the staffing industry and have built their careers at ALKU and have done things that they never thought they could do. And we have lots of those stories today. And in 5 years, I would hope we have even more of those stories, because our operating philosophy is we grow ALKU by growing the careers of the employees at the company. So if we're doing a good job over the next 5 years, and you and I are chatting 5 years from today, that's the majority of what we're talking about. How many more people have you brought into leadership? How many more people have become success stories at ALKU that didn't exist 5 years ago? That would be what we'd be talking about the most.
Well, it's a date. I'll see you and hear your $1 billion story
Perfect.
In the summer of 2030. Thank you so much for joining us, Andrew. Again, we've been talking with Andrew Bull, who's the new CEO at ALKU.
Well, thanks, Karen. Appreciate it.